We're excited to invite you to Seek the Peak. Join us for the 24th annual Ultimate Hike-a-thon in support of the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory, your source for weather forecasts in the White Mountains. Seek the Peak is New England's premier hiking event happening Saturday, July 20th, featuring amazing prizes for fundraising, tours of our summit weather station, and a huge après hike expo from 4 to 7 p.m. at Great Glen Trails. With live music, rock climbing wall, catered meal by Hart's Turkey Farm, beer garden, outdoor vendors, and our awesome outdoor community. Register today at seekthepeak.org and plan your summer hike up Mount Washington. You can also seek your own peak, any hike, any day. Raise important funds for the observatory, earn cool gear for yourself, and automatically take part in the epic raffle. The more you raise, the better your chances to win. Sign up as an individual or create a team to compete for unique prizes, including overnight trips at our world-famous weather station. Register now at seekthepeak.org, start your fundraising early, and join us on Saturday, July 20th at the Après Hike Expo to support the legendary Mount Washington Observatory. Presenting sponsors for Seek the Peak are Great Glen Trails and Eastern Mountain Sports, with support from this radio station.
Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
And here's your forecast for Friday, June 7th and Saturday, June 8th. Friday, in and out of the clouds under mostly cloudy skies with the showers and thunderstorms likely mainly late. With a high in the mid to upper 40s, winds will be southwest at 15 to 30 miles an hour with gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Higher gusts possible with thunderstorms. Friday night in the clouds, chance of showers and thunderstorms early. Again, with a low in the 40s, southwest winds at 15 to 30 miles per hour and gusts up to 40. Higher gusts possible with thunderstorms. Wind chill will be falling to 25 to 35 above. And then Saturday, the big 48 Peaks Day, we have in the clouds, chance of showers and thunderstorms late with a low to mid 40s for a temp. Winds will be west at 20 to 35 miles per hour with gusts up to 45 miles per hour. And the wind chill will be rising to 30 to 40 above. All right, have a great weekend out on the hills, everybody.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
Okay, that's right. We're rolling this back. So episode 155, Stomp, take two.
Take two.
We're with Jenn Kunze.
Kunze. Yeah, nailed it.
You're 2 for 2 on
Your German counterpart here.
Right. Yeah, Germany represent tonight.
So how you been, Stomp? You've been out hiking. I'm proud of you. I've still been recovering.
Oh, from your upper respiratory business or whatever?
Yeah. I'm still hacking up a lung over here, so
sucks.
I apologize ahead of time if I start coughing.
Yeah. Well, I'm recovering in my own way after that Pemi Loop, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it sounds very eventful, so we'll get going on that. But welcome to episode 155 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we are joined by Jenn Kunze, who is going to share her tale of spending time living and working as a sous chef at McMurdo Station in Antarctica for like 4 or 5 months, it sounds like. So Jenn spent the fall of 2023 through, I think, February and March of 2024 down in Antarctica and got to experience a bunch of cool adventures while at McMurdo. So we'll learn a little bit about her background, and she'll tell us some stories about what it takes to live in one of the most remote areas of the world. All this, plus we've got rabies news. We've got the longest day hike for Alzheimer's event this weekend. We've got some news out of Mount Everest. Stomp has set a Pemi Loop FKT for being the first and fastest hiker to carry a pool noodle on the route. And then we've got search and rescue news on Falling Waters, Kearsarge North, and Monadnock. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where we do a hiking buddy spot. So the very posh and polite Andrew Barlow is going to kick it off.
That's right. Another one coming up.
Yep.
This is Ben Pease from Hiking Buddies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit committed to reducing avoidable tragedies through education, impactful projects, and fostering a community of support. You can find out more at hikingbuddies.org. We wanted to say thank you to those who have supported our mission, and most importantly, say thanks to those who speak up, who ask questions, and who are willing to provide guidance and assistance on the trails when needed. You embody what it means to be a hiking buddy. And now, for all my newer hikers out there, here's this episode's Hiking Buddies Quick Tip.
Speak up. If you are becoming uncomfortable or physically unable to perform, do not put yourself and others in danger by pressing on. This is not just true in winter conditions, but particularly more dangerous in colder climates and poor weather conditions.
Very good, Stomp.
Yeah, good tips.
Did you learn anything in that one?
I sure did. I loved last week's, though. That was my favorite. I think last week's was the poop one.
Yes.
That's always a fun topic.
Yes, especially when Andrew says poop.
Right. 6 inches.
Excellent. So, yeah. So, this weekend, just a heads up for listeners. So we've got the 48 Peaks, the longest day celebration for Alzheimer's. So what's on the agenda for that, Stomp?
Well, I believe doors open at 3:00, and this is at Reckless Brewery. A lot of teams have hiked already, but some teams will be hiking this Saturday. And what is that? The 8th, right? Yeah, Saturday, yes. June 8th. We'll be doing music all day, raffles, and all kinds of fun stuff. So hope to see you there. And this is Reckless Brewery at the Pint House in the back of Reckless, right in Bethlehem, New Hampshire, which is north of the Notch.
Nice. Yeah, I'm getting out on Saturday. We're hiking. I'm on Lynn's team, so we're hiking Galehead. So it should be fun. It's going to be. It looks like the weather doesn't look great, but we'll get a little wet.
Yeah. So your team's all filled up?
I think so. Yeah, it's more than filled because I'm bringing my daughter and her boyfriend too, so they're tagging along.
Okay. Hey, listen. This is the moment of the show where I open my beer with my teeth to freak you out.
Jen.
I heard.
So what happens? So if you're in Antarctica and you get like a broken tooth or something major like that, do they have a dentist down there that can fix you up?
They do. However, they may not have a dentist always on station. However, one of the friends I made while I was down there had an issue with I think maybe an impacted tooth or something. They flew her back to Christchurch, New Zealand to have it taken care of, and then flew her back.
Really?
Yeah.
So that would be just like Stomp to like do something stupid like crack open a beer with his teeth and then have to get flown off of Antarctica to get, make a whole scene out of it.
I guess from what I understand, this season was record. They're called medevacs. And this was a record-breaking season for people having to be flown off the ice for whatever reason.
Oh, boy. Well, there's a lot of people. We'll get into it in more detail, but like you've got almost 1,000 people, so it's bound to, you're bound to have some people that run into issues. But Stomp is like, he's going to do a self-inflicted wound here. It's ridiculous.
I don't understand the teeth thing. Just grow your nails.
The teeth thing?
Yes.
I can't.
I agree.
I'm a guitarist by trade here, so I can't have long nails.
We are not opening the beer with the teeth is not going to become a regular thing. I'm not allowed to.
That's great.
If it helps, I will not be opening my beer with my teeth.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. So, all right. So if anybody wants to come out and meet Stomp, and I'll be there soaking wet like a drowned rat at 3:00 at Reckless. We'll be there on Saturday. So we're looking forward to meeting everybody.
Yeah. How's the forecast looking? I think 15-20% rain, maybe? Pray for sun.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks kind of overcast and dreary, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Yep. All right, Stomp. Then we've got a listener, Eric J72, wanted us to put a plug in for a fundraiser in memory of his mother. So I think that this is legit, but the disease that he is supporting, it looks like a disease that was put in purposely to make me pronounce something incorrectly. So I'm going to ask you to pronounce this disease.
Okay, so this is a plug for Eric's effort here. Apparently, this August 15th to 18th, he's going to be doing a Pemi Loop in memory of his mom who passed away from this rare form of cancer. And I'll give it a shot as well. It's cholangiocarcinoma, which is a rare liver cancer. We have the link for you, and the event's called Summits for Cindy. And at that link, you can donate there for this event and this fundraiser. And wish you the best, Eric. It's a great cause.
Yeah, we'll definitely put this in the show notes. And Stomp, I'm very impressed that you were able to get that pronunciation down. But
thank you.
Summits for Cindy, and we'll keep this in the show notes up until the event that goes off on August 15th to the 18th.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Next up, Stomp, a little plug here that there is a race that is going off. It's the Squam Ridge Race, and it is, it looks like it's on September 29th from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. So sign-ups are now open. Cool. And and it looks like there's two options. There is a 12-mile course, and then there's a 4-mile course, and there's like a competitive 12-mile race, and then there's a hiking for fun 12-mile race, and then the 4-mile I think is just for fun. But it looks like it starts on some trails along 113 on True Farm Road. Maybe that's a road. And then you run up to Mount Percival and then make your way back along Mount Morgan and then over to Livermore. So, yeah, it looks like a fun little area. I never really made it past that like southern part of Ridgepole trail because we stopped at Morgan that time. So I haven't really been in that area, but the Squam Ridge is like a lot of up and down. So it's probably going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great traverse. 12.2 miles for the full thing and about 3,000 feet of elevation gain. So pretty cool. I'm still looking to do this, to finish off that southern terminus that we have not done yet. Yeah. But yeah, sounds like fun.
Excellent. And then next up, Stomp, you pulled an article. A young man from Rutland, Massachusetts, was able to summit Mount Everest. So I think he was like 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, pretty young.
And he funded, this is pretty cool. So he funded his trip. So usually it costs about $50,000 to do Mount Everest, plus or minus 10, 15 grand. But he made his money playing Minecraft on YouTube. So he's like a YouTuber.
Oh, wow.
And he made enough money to pay for his trip to Mount Everest. So I guess he documented on his YouTube channel, and he trained going up and down Wachusett Mountain. And sometimes he would do like 12 hours up and down. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. He flew out of Boston on April 19th, and it took him 42 days, but he made it to the summit.
Excellent. Yeah, past all the drama and the queues and all the other stuff that's going on out there. But I like that 12-hour jaunts up and down Wachusett. That's great. With a 35-pound pack, that seems a little light, but I'm sure maybe he amped it up a bit.
Well, they have Sherpas there, Stomp, so they're carrying their stuff for them. So,
not all of it.
Yeah, I guess not. All right, Stomp. So I pulled this article. I saw this across the news, and I thought this was kind of funny. There's this like waterfall. It's a 1,000-foot waterfall in China that like attracts a lot of tourists. Yeah. And I guess a hiker had noticed. They were like, wow, this is usually the dry season, and it seems like the waterfall's flowing pretty well. So this hiker went up and climbed to the top of the waterfall and discovered that the Park Service in China had installed a pipe that was able to run water from the top of the waterfall so that the waterfall would continue to basically be spectacular year round. So he put the video on social media, and everyone's like upset because they're like, it's not natural now. It's like, it's fake. So
a little sleight of hand.
It's in China. So word is that the guy that posted the video is no longer coming down for dinner tonight.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. He's assumed room temperature.
Yeah. So it would be like if, somebody piped in water on top of like, Champney Falls or, one of the Ripley Falls or something like that.
Right. What a crazy story.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. And then, Stomp, you had talked about rabies last week. So there's a little bit of rabies news. I pulled this article. So there's a singer. I don't know anything about her. So there's a bunch of interesting things about this story. So the singer's name is Taylor Momsen, who I've never heard of. Apparently she was like an actress in Gossip Girl. Jen, do you know Gossip Girls? Did you watch like the whole season when you were in Antarctica?
I never watched Gossip Girls on any continent.
Okay. All right. Well,
sorry.
She apparently she was apparently an actress, but now she's a singer. And there's this video going around where she's singing and she's wearing like a mini dress, but like underneath the mini dress, there's like this brown thing sticking out. And she's like walking around for a good 2-3 minutes, and everyone's like, what is that brown thing under her dress? And then she like bends over to like shoo it away. And sure enough, it's a bat had landed on her leg while she's singing on her set. And so she...
Mrs. Stomp told me about this.
Yeah. And basically, I guess I don't know how long the bat was there. It was there for over a minute when I saw the video, but they had to... I guess she had gotten bitten by the bat while she was on stage, and now she's got to get rabies shots and get treatment.
A lot of rabies talk going on lately, kids.
A lot of rabies talk, so I figured I would grab that one. Here's the crazy thing.
Because that's not crazy enough.
Yeah, that's not crazy enough. She was opening for AC/DC. Stomp. Can you believe that those guys are still touring?
Oh, yeah. But the bat thing is more like you wish it would have been Ozzy Osbourne or something, He was all about the bats.
Yeah, Ozzy could have grabbed it and bit the head off. But here's the thing. I looked up AC/DC. So Angus Young is 69 years old. So he's relatively young compared to a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson, who's the lead singer, he's 76. And then Malcolm Young, who had passed away probably about 5 years ago, has been replaced by his nephew, Steve Young. So I just thought that was crazy that AC/DC's out there touring when they're all in their 70s. And then it reminded me that the Rolling Stones are out on tour as well.
It's amazing what you can do when you can recycle your blood and get all the impurities out every week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. But I feel like there's nothing... like, is there anything less rock and roll than like these old rock stars like touring and refusing to let it go? Like, it's just sad.
Yeah, I know. It is funny. I was just talking about David Gilmour from Pink Floyd with my folks last week, and he put out a new album, and there's a video of him in the studio surrounded by a bunch of just people like praising him. And it just occurred to me that like nobody's going to tell him that take was awful or this song is terrible. Everybody's surrounding him going, yeah, that's great, Dave.
Yeah,
it sounds great.
yeah.
And it's so mediocre.
Yeah, well, the thing I'll say about Gilmour and like Pink Floyd is like the one thing I will say about them is like AC/DC and Rolling Stones, like they've made the stage activity the event in their tours. Like Gilmour and Pink Floyd, they made more like the light show and the music, their experience. So I feel like somebody like David Gilmour can get away with sort of being more in the background. And, you know, he's had some performances where he's been unbelievable, but it's time to pack it in.
More immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, all right. So enough of this nonsense. So let's get back to, I pulled this search and rescue from the regular news and just pulled it forward because I thought this was interesting. So there was a rescue of a glider in, I guess
Benton.
was it by Musalaki Stomp? Is that what it was?
No, it was, I'm pretty certain it was near Cannon and Franconia Ridge and into Benton.
Okay, off that backside of Cannon.
Yeah, for sure. I think they launch out of that back Kinsman side.
Yeah. So for people that aren't aware, like you can, a lot of times in the summer, if you go to Franconia Ridge or you do Cannon, there's tons of gliders around. And I've been up on Franconia when there's like 3 or 4 of these gliders circling around. So it's not uncommon to see them, but maybe it's a little early in the year. I don't know. Maybe the updrafts aren't what they usually are, but an 84-year-old pilot from Turnbridge, Vermont, apparently was gliding around Cannon Mountain, and he tried to turn back and he had trouble getting lift. So he was circling the ridge near Hogsback, I guess, is the mountain or the summit. And he couldn't get lift, hit a downdraft, and then crashed near the saddle of Hogsback around 4:30. He was about 20 feet off the ground. He was able to call 911, and they were ultimately able to get him. So he crashed around 5 o'clock, and they were able to get him back out of there around like 10 o'clock at night. So the FAA is investigating, and, you know, it looks like it was just one of these, you know, bad luck stories. But I don't know enough about gliders to know whether he made any mistakes or anything. But I do know that it's a pretty busy area on Franconia Ridge where the gliders hang out.
Yeah, I wonder if they have emergency parachutes. Can they eject? I don't know enough about it either. But if you look at the picture, man, that glider is face first, hanging from a tree. That guy's very, very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, the wingspan on those gliders is huge too. Yeah. So they're pretty light, but they're also very big.
Yeah. Incredible.
So anyway, but yeah, it's definitely cool if you get up on Franconia and the gliders are up there and you watch them, because they're pretty high up. Like they're a couple thousand feet above the summit. So they have to be flying around like, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000 feet of elevation.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Yep.
We all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it. Ba-dum-bum.
All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where I do a dad joke. So Jen, do you like my dad jokes?
I'm a huge fan of puns, and I mean that naturally blends into dad jokes.
Okay.
I have a bad dad joke.
Okay, all right. Hold for a minute, and we'll do yours right after mine. So, how are scrambled eggs and baseball teams the same? They both get beaten.
That's pretty weak.
All right, Jen, see if you can beat that dad joke.
Follow that.
Yeah, Jen.
Why do dads tell such corny jokes?
I give up.
Because they want you to grown up.
Okay. I don't know which one is worse.
Oh, boy. Oh, those are rough.
All right, those are rough. But
I couldn't come empty-handed, so.
Yeah, I appreciate it, though. For effort, and Stomp, you're going to have to edit that little clip there. So
I will.
All All right, this is the part of the show where we do an advertiser. We're going to be doing Vaucluse.
All right, Vaucluse gear. Does your backpack not provide enough ventilation? Does your back sweat too much when backpacking? As you know, sweat can be extremely uncomfortable on the trails. Plus, sweat is a serious risk factor in both hot and cold climates. As your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate. This can result in hypothermia, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. And let's not forget, just very uncomfortable. Today's your lucky day because we have good news for you. There's a piece of gear that solves the sweat and ventilation problem, making your backpack more comfortable. Vaucluse Gear's ultralight backpack ventilation frame. This ultralight frame is a backpack accessory that easily installs in your favorite pack, size 15 liters to 45 liters, and creates a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. It's also ultralight, weighing around 3 ounces. That's equivalent to a pair of wool socks or a pool noodle. Whether hiking in hot or cold temps, the ultralight backpack ventilation frame from Vaucluse Gear is a real game changer regarding airflow and ventilation. Visit vauclusegear.com to order an ultralight ventilation frame today. Use promo code SLASHER to enjoy a $5 discount. Plus, you let them know that Mike and Stomp sent you. Cool. All right. We will have stickers at the show the event this Saturday, but you can also get them at Ski Fanatics in Campton, New Hampshire off of exit 28, or Spinner's Pizza Parlor in Andover off of Dascombe Road, 93 in Massachusetts. If anybody's interested, we do have advertising packages if you want to get your product or whatever it may be advertised. And we do have a few donations this week, which is great. If you want to support the podcast with a donation, we have a site at Buy Me a Coffee, which you can go to and do so. So this week we have a 5 coffee donation from Anonymous. Thank you, Anonymous. So mysterious. N.L. Gagnon donated 3 coffees. Then we have Alex M., who donated 5. Jeff P. also donated 5 coffees. And then Paul donated 20 coffees. So thank you, everybody, so much for that.
Wow.
It's much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah. Stomp's going to get new microphones now.
Yeah, or new dentures for my teeth after all this beer opening.
True, yes. So we'll talk about beer in a minute, but we've got another sponsor here, CS Coffee.
Yeah, let's see. Our podcast is supported by CS Instant Coffee, makers of eco-friendly instant coffee. It's perfect for anyone who loves the outdoors as much as we do. Great for backpacking, day hiking, camping, and even at home. Learn more and get in touch at www.csinstant.coffee or email us at info@csinstant.coffee.
Jen, what was the coffee situation in Antarctica? Like, you must go through an insane amount of coffee there.
Thankfully, the cooks did not have to brew the coffee for the cafeteria. There is,
okay.
but we did have that 24 hours a day. But there is actually a coffee house that's open during the summer. It's open 24/7, and volunteers will work as a barista. So I absolutely had a cappuccino or a latte down there, and sometimes the cooks would put together different syrups, flavored syrups, or maybe somebody would donate something to the coffee house so you could get something different. And the coffee.
Were you able to maintain?
No, I'm sorry. I was just
go ahead.
say the coffee beans that were used, I want to say they were roasted by a company out in South Carolina, maybe? I don't remember.
Okay. Did you, when you're in that environment where it's like daylight, almost 24 hours a day or like a long period of time, do you get out of sync, or are you able to maintain like a regular sleep schedule where you sleep at night and then wake up in the morning?
It was a weird adjustment because my brain equates daytime with get out and do things. And I actually had to set my phone to military time so I could, like, if I fell asleep and woke up, I couldn't tell if it was 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. because it was all the same for the majority of the time, like daylight. We had really good blackout curtains in the rooms, and I invested in a really good sleep mask. And once I kind of got myself on a schedule after all the traveling and craziness, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't too tough to adjust, but it definitely did take an adjustment.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'd have to imagine that like coffee is a big thing down in Antarctica, so I would be, be a priority.
Yeah, I saw your pictures, Jen. They were great. So I actually saw like a Starbucks logo. Is that like legit Starbucks, or is that a...
No. That had to do with Ice Stock, the New Year's Eve celebration that we had. And I may be completely incorrect, but I believe it was a coffee setup that was put on maybe by the carpenters or the electricians. They had their own little booth, and it was not the Starbucks logo. It was slightly different because they were serving it with serving it with alcohol for the pretty much for the New Year's celebration.
I got it.
Oh, well.
That's cool.
Well, speaking, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail. I'm just kind of curious on these questions. But speaking of alcohol, this is the part of the show where we talk about what beer we are drinking. So I'm still dealing with this upper respiratory thing, so I'm just drinking water. But Jen, you got something going on there.
Yes, what do you got? In honor of one of my favorite breweries, which we just found out is closing down for good. It's Hermit Thrush out of Brattleboro, Vermont. Huh. And actually, I think. Stomp, was it last episode or the episode before you were drinking a sour? Yeah, they only do sours.
Yep.
Oh
my goodness.
And I am a huge fan. I know they're not for everybody. But this is Brattle Beer. It's a founder aged sour ale with local apples. It's super tasty. So we actually we just drove up to Brattleboro, my partner and I, to pick up about 4 cases to help them liquidate their inventory.
Oh, nice.
Oh, interesting.
So,
is it super tart, like really tart?
Yes. And I know they're still in stores. If you're at all curious, I know that there are Brattle Beer might not be in stores, but some of their like Party Jam and other sour wild ales might still be in stores.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out.
It's good to know. And Stomp, I actually did ask my my daughter's boyfriend about that Greater Good sour that you had, and that was what he likes those too. I think it's like Funky Town or something.
Oh my goodness. That was so sour. Yes. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he likes those.
It was like a candy.
Holy moly. Because I need to check them out.
It's Greater Good is the brewery out of Worcester.
Oh.
And the beer, hold on, I'll tell you right now if I can find it.
Well, this ties in good with what I have tonight,
It does, okay. Funk Daddy is what it is. It's an Imperial Sour IPA, 8%.
Oh, I don't know
Right, so it buries that beer taste.
I don't know about sours and IPAs. I'm not a huge IPA fan. And anytime I find one that I like, I figure it's probably a bad IPA.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had one.
Maybe. I can tell you it did not taste like beer at all because the lemon, the sour was so overwhelming. Mrs. Stomp took a sip and she's like, ooh, she cringed up or she puckered up. I mean, it was so sour.
I'm definitely going to need to check them out.
Yeah, they're nice. I mean, Worcester just in general has a bunch of good places to go.
But speaking of that, I do have my favorite is the Pulp Daddy from those guys. Yep. And tonight when I was going to get something for tonight, I found this Juice Daddy, which is ridiculous. It's 9.9, but what it is that Pulp Daddy. So I guess it's like a hybrid in between that Funky Town and the Pulp Daddy that I'm really fond of. So it's amped up on the sour stuff. So it has a lot more of the orange and things that give it that fruity citrus type of flavor. Really good.
Okay, so Stomp's going with another version of Greater Good tonight. So, all right, well, hopefully next week I will be back at it. And I don't know, I can't kick this thing. I've been muting my button and coughing all over the place, so I apologize, but working through it.
Yeah.
All right, Stomp. And then
It's all good.
This is the part of the show where we talk about recent hikes. So I got nothing. I am getting out on Saturday, hopefully. But you've been up to a bunch of stuff. So why don't you share with the listeners, Stomp, where you've been going?
Yeah, I just want to give a plug to the Kunze Bog. Just yesterday, I had some time to kill, and the Kunze Bog is it's off of Tenny Mountain Drive in Plymouth, and it's a beautiful 1 mile loop around a bog that is sort of like it rests at one of the flanks of Mount Stinson, if you're familiar with Mount Stinson. And it's 43 acres, a beautiful place. The bugs are a little outrageous, but they are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year for the protection of that bog. So it's been 50 years since the foundation of the trust that protects the bog. And it's a neat place. It's like maybe a third mile, maybe up to a half a mile of just bog bridges that you walk on, and then mostly flat for people that have issues with elevation. So check it out; it's really nice. But at the moment, you might want to bring your bug spray or bug net.
Okay.
And then moving on to the big enchilada. I did the single day Pemi Loop, and I went clockwise this time around. So this will be my 4th time doing it. Now I've done it twice counterclockwise and twice clockwise. I think I mentioned online that it's easier mentally and psychologically for me to go clockwise. Yeah. I don't know if people agree with that or not, but that's what I find. I started about 8:30 in the morning, and I took my time. I had backpacking, heavy leather boots on. I had probably like 40 pounds. I had all my stuff with me thinking, okay, I haven't done this in a while. I think my max mileage up until recently has been about 10 miles. So I said to myself, if I can make it to say Bon Cliff and I crash, then I can crash. Yeah. So I really took my time. I came out at 19 hours, which is, that sort of stings a bit. Since I did it in 12, like a couple of years back before my hip surgery and all that, but I'm not making excuses. So it was phenomenal. The weather was perfect. I did get to see that Black Hawk extraction from a distance. The Black Hawk was busy rescuing somebody that had a medical emergency just below the summit of Haystack. And when I got to Haystack, I met some of the Alpine stewards, Carla and Leanne. They were fantastic, and I really was unaware that they were Alpine stewards. I knew about the stewards at the base, but at the top of the peaks, you have stewards as well.
Yeah, I've run into them in the past. And they're sort of like just advising people to just stay on the trail and stay out of the fragile vegetation and all that stuff. So, yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Yeah, super cool. So I made it to South Twin by the time sunset hit, and at that point I still had...
Oh, damn. So you were in the dark.
Dude. Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw a sign. I think the junction at Gio says 8.1 miles to Lincoln Woods. So I still had at least 15 miles to go, and it was sunset.
Oh, wow.
So I just sat on the top of South Twin and just resolved, just said, okay, let's get it in gear and go. By the time I got to Gio, I had to put the headlamps on, and that was a thrill. I mean, I've never seen a night sky like this, probably in my memory. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely phenomenal. No clouds, somewhat sketchy coming through Gio, and then coming down Bond was, I forgot how rough that is, coming down Bond and then transitioning to the flat.
Yeah, it's a lot longer. It's a lot longer. Like you go into the trees a little bit and then you come out. It's a long distance to get over to Pond Cliff.
Yeah. At like 10:30 at night, I heard noises coming down from Bond, and I actually yelled at him like, hello? Who's coming? I thought it was a bear, but it ended up being 3 young ladies that were hiking up and heading over to Gio, nice. So that was neat. And a great time. I came out and I saw sunrise, and then I spent Sunday on the couch just totally recovering.
Yeah, besides those 3, did you see anybody else coming up Lincoln Woods at night?
I saw nobody on Lincoln Woods. Wow. Nobody at all. Boy, was that a long walk out. My feet were killing me.
A lot of time in your thoughts, huh?
Oh, dude. Yeah. Right. That whole thing. You know how adverse I am to having people on trail. Mm-hmm. I love being alone. I was actually welcoming those brief little encounters with people that would pass me just for those few words. It was great. And so that's that. And then there's the whole
Yeah. So for the listeners, Stomp did this cool little thing where he decided to like take a, he took like a inspiration from Larry the Log, and instead of a log, he's smart. He took a pool noodle, which weighs like nothing, and he set the fastest known time for a hiker carrying a pool noodle. And then he also did a video, which was great. He used like Lord of the Rings, and then like he did the behind the scenes, like, because you always see the hiking videos on YouTube where they'll show them like walking past the camera, but Stomp did the thing where he actually like forgot to edit out the setting up the camera, and like he would walk and then come back and get his camera, but he wouldn't edit it out. So it's kind of funny because you don't really think about that, but you're like, oh, that's what they're doing, is they're like, and I've done that before, honestly. Exactly. I'll be honest with you, I've done that before, but I thought it was kind of funny. It was very epic.
Mr. Stomp and I thought of that. We were grocery shopping last Friday night, and we saw the pool noodle on the way out of Hannaford. And immediately the two of us are like, oh, you got to take that on your trip. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So you're right, though. That was the funny thing about it. I have always found it humorous that content creators, edit out the setup portion of those videos of them walking by or walking through. So I had to keep it. And I actually want to thank Dave for that, because Dave Schitz was my comic like supervisor on them. Like, Dave, should I keep that in? And he's like, absolutely, it's pure gold. So it was funny.
Yeah, no, that's great. So,
and last thing about this though, there were a lot of comments along the way, and what I started doing when people would pass me, everybody was asking like, "What's the noodle for?" So I started saying different things to different people. Like some people, I would say, "Oh, it's insulation for one of the huts," or what else? Oh, for people, I slap people with the noodle if they have flip flops on, things like that. It was just hilarious.
Funny. Yeah, I'm going to swim in Garfield Pond or whatever.
But right. It was a good time.
Oh, that's good. Well, Stomp, maybe it'll be your thing. You can be the pool noodle guy.
Yeah, well, good luck trying to crush that record.
Well, good luck to you. So Jenn, have you been out at all hiking recently?
I have, and just kind of a PSA. If you ever decide to spend 4 to 6 months in Antarctica and then come back and then spend about a week moving your items from one home to another, and then you take a trip out to Arizona, which is also incredibly dry. Make sure you hydrate because I have been absolutely toast, like 100% toast. And I learned my lesson early on hiking the Whites about how necessary hydration is. And apparently I didn't learn anything from it because I've been recovering. So I just got out on the trails. What's today? Thursday. So I went out Wednesday to a local spot in the Northborough, Mass area called Mount Pigsa, and I had nice. this great little 3-mile loop that I was going to do to explore the trails, and I did 1.25 miles and called it, and got out today and actually did just under 3 miles with slightly better shoes and slightly better clothes and some bug spray. But my strength is gone. Like, I think back to all the hiking I've done in the Whites, and I couldn't do any of that right now.
Yeah, well, you'll work your way back. But yeah, Arizona's brutal. Like, I think I was like, I do a 3-mile hike in Arizona in the heat would be the equivalent of like a 9 or 10 mile hike in the Whites.
Yeah, between the elevation, the dry climate, and then I don't know what. I spent a couple days in Phoenix, and then friends and I went up to Flagstaff, and the allergy, whatever was up there, hit me so hard that my sinuses were so clogged. So between that and then plane flights and elevation and air pressure, I was miserable.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm still recovering.
Well, you'll be back at it soon enough. But all right. Well, hopefully I'll have a story to tell soon enough, Stomp. But I'm proud of you for the Pemi Loop, and Jenn, I'm glad that you're getting back into it.
Yeah,
All
definitely.
right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where we do an advertisement for 48 Peaks.
All right, this is the big weekend. So use your passion for hiking to help end Alzheimer's. In one collective effort, 400 plus hikers will climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own challenge to support the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. The annual hiker celebration will take place this Saturday, June 8th at Reckless Brewing Company with raffles, food, and an amazing community. Hike that weekend or any day you want. Excuse me. No fundraising minimums required, but those who raise $100 will receive this year's performance grade purple t-shirt. Let's turn the White Mountains purple to end Alzheimer's. Visit alts.org/48 peaks to learn more.
It's time for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag Slasher on your social media post.
Very good, Stomp. Now we have a backlog of notable hikes that we're going to plow through here before we get to Jen.
Yeah, right on. So if you want to tag us for your hike, do so, and you can be considered for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. And I really want to just say props to the people that have tagged us. They're really doing some really novel and new and interesting things to tag us for. So we start with Northeast Discovery, who did an overnight on Algonquin Trail. It was out and back via the scrambles. Boreal Badass was up in Madison Gulf. And the Grateful Hiker completed the Spring Fling Trail Challenge along with Allison. 75 miles from March to May, finishing on Mount Monadnock. Very
What
cool.
is this Spring Fling Challenge? Do we know what this is?
No, we don't.
We have to Google this.
All right. Do you mind if I continue?
Sorry.
All right, no problem.
I'm researching as you're talking.
Okay. Duchess 3663 did Mount Pemi. Northeast Discovery. Now, this is a cool one, too. Hiked up the Nubble, which is / maybe a bushwhack, a little bit of herd path, little combo. It's the little bump just below North Twin that you can see from certain vistas. It's also known as Haystack Mountain in Bethlehem. Seagothberg hiked Wildcat Ridge, Wildcat River Trail, Bogbrook Trail, Hall's Ledge Trail, then back via Route 16 that is, and that's a death march. That is a death march. I've done that from Gorham all the way back to Glen Boulder on that road. Oh, yeah. That's a nightmare. A couple more. We have EC Banks hikes. Hiked Avalon Field Tom Willie Twins for 20 miles and 7.6 thousand vertical. And I don't know who this is, but at I Love Meowtons.
Sounds familiar.
Did the Grand Traverse. She did the Grand Traverse from Tecumseh to Dickey, and parentheses, she wants to let you know that she said she'd get you a puppy if you vote for her.
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know who that is, but whatever. Yeah. Northeast Discovery did Glen Boulder. Oh man, we do have a backlog, huh? Wow.
That's fine.
Jude hikes the White, Mount Hedgehog, Allen's Ledge, and Laura Eli was up Mount Hale and Zealand Loop. Hiking Feeds My Soul and Miles did Smarts Mountain, 52 without a view. A couple more here. Liz Fay was up on Piermont Mountain, which is one of the New Hampshire highest 500s.
Oh, yeah.
Margaret and Spence. Margaret and her dad hiked Carter Dome, Mount Height, South Carter, and Middle Carter from Margaret's 34th, 35th, and 36th of the 4,000 footers. And on the 29th, Margaret's dad completed a single-day Mahoosuc traverse north to south.
Ooh,
yikes.
That's
Grafton Notch to Gorham.
Ooh, that's impressive.
Yeah, it sure is. Our good friend Jess Delo did a few days on the Sky Trail in Scotland. That's pretty neat. And L. Gagnon hiked Middle Sugarloaf. P. Gam Jr. hiked Madison and then Isolation. That's a lengthy trip as well. Gingerbeard Keen. This is cool. This is something that Larson tackled and set a fastest known time for a couple years back. It's the Skyline Loop in Waterville Valley, and they did 35 miles, 10.9 thousand elevation over 14 hours. That's pretty awesome. Nice job.
Yeah, that's great.
And then finally, Full Strength Coffee and Steve Summits tagged us for a Memorial Day hike. They carried remembrance stones up Mount Doubletop in Baxter State Park as part of the Summit Project. So they hiked with a team of 5, each carrying a stone for a fallen veteran hero. And these stones were given to them by Gold Star families and then returned to them after the hike was completed.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's great.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So many to choose from here.
I think I'm going to go. So Margaret and Spence. I got a soft spot for the father-daughter deal, and then Dad did a Mahuzik Traverse single day, and he did it north to Salt. So that's I'll give you that one, and then Gingerbeard with the Skyline Loop, and then we'll give it to Full Strength Coffee and Steve Summit. So Jeff and Steve on the Baxter adventure. So 3 for 3.
Wow. 3 for 3. So wait a minute. You're passing on a puppy.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Mrs. Mike won't be happy. Mrs. Mike, if Mrs. Stomp shows up with a puppy, Mrs. Mike is not going to. She's going to send it back to you, Stomp.
Okay.
It's just going to be too much more trouble than it's worth. So.
All right, suit yourself. That's all right.
So, Jen, this is your moment.
Okay.
This is your time.
I'm ready.
We're going to get into your segment. All right. So, I'm going to start this off with a quote by Anthony Bourdain, who visited in 2017. He said, "There's a curiosity in everyone who comes here." So, we're talking about Antarctica. It's a continent of travels, of seekers, united in the continuation of exploration, learning, the search for greater understanding, the pursuit of pure knowledge. So that's Anthony Bourdain. Was it that epic from your perspective, Jen?
It's tough to say. The overall experience, when I look back on it, and the arrival was incredibly epic. But the day-to-day was incredibly exhausting and probably not what people expect to hear.
Yeah, it's like So Jen has been in contact with us. Like she's been, I think her and Stomp connected like a while back, and she had told us that she was down in Antarctica working, and we were like, oh, we definitely want to have you on to learn more about this because I feel like the listeners would be super interested. So you got back, and we're happy to have you here. So why don't you start off, and we'll talk a lot about the station and the whole layout, but why don't you just start off with an introduction? Tell us a little bit about sort of your background and your early life experience, and a little bit about your hiking background.
Sure. I born and raised on Cape Cod, and I was of the generation where when you got home from school, you changed out of your school clothes into play clothes and you went outside so that you didn't bother mom, for the next few hours, come back at dinner time. So while I wasn't necessarily into hiking at a young age, it was out riding my bikes or playing with the kids in the neighborhood or exploring the woods. My first experience hiking was actually up in Baxter State Park, and I had really no idea how special it was until I really looked back on it. It was just probably 12, 13 years old, and my best friend at the time invited me to go with her mom and a friend of theirs. And we hiked Black Cat, we hiked North Traveler, Double Top, and I don't remember which peak of Katahdin. I know we did not do the Knife's Edge, but I have these pictures of me with the external frame backpack that is bigger than me. The knee socks up to my knees, and I look so ridiculous, like so tiny. I have no idea how I carried that pack around, but it's youth, and you don't think twice about it. And I was just along to hang out with my best friend, and we camped out in the woods, and we saw, moose, and we heard loons, and we were up on mountains, and it was amazing. And then I didn't do anything because for years, because school came along and the malls were there and the boys were around, and I didn't want to be out, hiking. And after college, I moved down to be with my now ex-husband in Central Kentucky. And when that kind of went south, I realized I needed to get out. I needed to make new friends and get back out into the world rather than being upset about a divorce. And I found the Red River Gorge in Kentucky, in eastern Kentucky, and I got back out hiking and learned about geocaching, which plays an important part in me getting into the whites. And I realized, like, I have been wasting my time, not hiking. So I moved back to the Cape in 2005 and immediately started exploring. I had geocaching as a hobby at that point, as an activity. It got me out, it kept me active. And while the Cape is not necessarily a sandbar, I mean, it does have some elevation changes. I realized as I kind of geocached my way through the Cape, I kept venturing further out into Massachusetts and explored the Blue Hills and Wachusett, all pretty much geocaching driven. And that is what brings me to the whites. A couple caching friends of mine wanted to go after a specific geocache on Mount Success. It was April. I'm sorry. It was very cool. And I had absolutely no idea what I was in for. I'm thinking.
So you're going to Mount Success in April, though?
In April, yes.
All right. So did the three of you know what you were in for, or were you were just caching?
No, we were caching driven.
That's a muddy mess.
Yeah. No search and rescue was needed, thankfully. I can say that now.
Okay.
But so we're driving up, we leave early morning, and there's an older geocache that's just off the summit near the plane wreckage. Okay. And we get maybe an hour from, I think it's Berlin or Milan.
Yes.
And it starts snowing, and we're like, what the heck do we do? I think we stopped at the Walmart on the way and got ourselves some gloves and maybe some long sleeve stuff. And because, April down here is completely different.
Yeah. And, I mean, you're going up Success Pond Road in April. Yeah. Like it's, oh boy.
Yeah. So, well, thankfully the guy who was driving had a Jeep 4-wheel drive. So we were okay with that. But, we get to the trailhead, and if I remember correctly, it pretty much just starts up, like, most trailheads.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, I'm screwed. Like, what? How is this? This is just supposed to be a walk in the woods to find a geocache, And it was definitely more than I had wanted to tackle. But once we got up on the ridge and headed towards the summit, I was just absolutely blown away. And it was, bluebird conditions. It was beautiful. You could see Washington, snow-capped, in the background. And I was 100% hooked. I still did not like the effort it took to get up there. But I was absolutely hooked. Although I don't know what happened in between 2012 and 2016, but 16 was my first, 4,000 footer. We did Osceola and East Osceola with one of the other two that I joined for that, for Mount Success. And we did.
Hey, Jen.
I'm sorry?
Well, how were the roads getting in there? Were they just muddy? Because that is mud season, right?
I don't
Pretty
remember.
Much. And those are all muddy dirt roads.
I don't remember a lot of mud. It must have been cold enough to where the roads were pretty solid, but they were open.
Okay. Sure. Because that must be a mess up there when it warms up.
Yeah, I have not been up there. Actually, I've been up there one other time going after another geocache related to Goose Eye. But I want to say maybe that was June, July. So I definitely didn't have the same issues. But I don't remember any mud issues. So it must have been cold enough.
Yeah, it was probably so cool because it's the thing about that side is that it's northerly facing, so it doesn't get a lot of direct sunlight. So I've been up there. I've hiked in like August, and it was like wet and muddy still. So it was probably still sort of pretty firm when you got up there.
Yeah, definitely. But
anyway, so fast forward to 2016 though. Did you start the 4,000 footers at that point?
Yes. So we learned. I had a good friend at the time that was also into geocaching, and he was willing to hike with me. And after after summiting Mount Success, we learned about the 52 with a view, which of course led to the 48. And we started going after summits that had geocaches on them, two for kind of a, two birds with one stone. And we started with Osceola because it's labeled as easy, the easiest. I swear I was like, was that the woman from like Alabama or something who complained about the rocks on the?
Yeah. She wrote the letter. Yeah. That was, I think, Jackson Webster Trail that she was complaining
still,
about.
I mean, we all know for the most part how ridiculous the whites are. And I'm coming from a lifetime of wooded trails, with some elevation, but not where half of the trail is a big, ginormous rock slab. And it beat me up, and I hated almost every step going up. But again, I had the right conditions when we get up to the top, and we are early starters. So we were up there before the crowds were. And this was maybe June of 2016. There was nobody up there when we got to Osceola, and the views were just amazing. Totally hooked me. We went and did East Osceola. The chimney scared me, but I really think that the bypass, which was my plan, was tougher than the chimney.
Yeah. You take your pick, really.
But we did that, and when we came back, it looked like there was a cafeteria up there. Like there were so many people up there, which totally cemented my love of starting early. So we get back down. I'm practically in tears from relief when we get down to the parking lot, because that was a lot more work than I ever wanted to do. But that year I did something like 7 peaks because I was so incredibly hooked, and it was just amazing. And there was nothing like it, obviously down where I am. And I mean, from that, I didn't stop. I mixed, 52s, 48s. I tackled a couple of 4Ks in Vermont when I could, and started looking at Western Mass I had done Greylock previously, but I just started hiking anytime that I could. And it's a little, I was working a really weird job, hours wise and schedule wise. I only had 2 weekends off a month. So the weather had to agree, and I had to be able to get up there. But anytime I could, I was up in the whites, because it's just gorgeous. It's unreal.
Well, and then what caused you to suddenly sometime, I'm assuming at some point around 2022 or 2023, you started looking into this idea of doing like a grand trip. Had you done anything like this before, like trying to go off and do long travel or work somewhere outside of your area?
Actually, yeah, and it's another. I've done my first bit of international travel down to, other than Canada and Mexico, was down to Brazil to go after a geocache. And that really opened up travel for me. And I'm constantly, I may not have the flexibility job-wise at this point, but I'm constantly looking at, what can I get away with traveling to? Where can I go? What can I see? And I came across this woman's blog twice. Once maybe in 2020, 2021. And I kind of thought about it like glancing, like there's no way I could ever do that kind of thing. But she wrote about getting paid to travel. And one of the locations that she had experienced traveling to was Antarctica. I'm thinking, wow, that's amazingly cool, but there's no way I could ever do something like that. And then I ended up falling into a volunteer position with the Mount Washington Weather Observatory in 2023 of March and April. And I did that for a week, and I thought, well, if I can do that for a week, like, I might as well apply. Why not? I think I'd seen her blog again, like just before I spent the week up at the summit. And without telling anybody, I applied for it. And about a week later, I got an email back saying, hey, you meet the minimum requirements. And so I'm like, oh, that's great.
It's the nightmare scenario, like the tentative
Minimum.
job applicant all of a sudden hears back and they're like, we want to hire you. And you're like, oh no, this is my fantasy is suddenly real.
Exactly. So. Suddenly it's very real.
That's cool.
It kind of blew me away, even with the whole minimum requirement, kind of dig. So I told my partner about it. He was very, very supportive. Told my family about it.
He's like, I would love to see you go away for 6 months.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. He's been along on some of my hikes and some of my geocaching shenanigans, and he's like, yeah, we could use a break. Or I could use a break from your craziness. But everybody I talked to was very supportive.
That's awesome.
And I figured, what did I have to lose? Like the worst that could happen is they'll say no.
Yeah. So you hear from the recruiter or the HR person or whatever, and then did you have to go through an interview process?
Yep. I went through a first interview with actually one of the current sous chefs who was off station at the time. And I actually got to see her while I was down on the station, which was very cool to chat with her. And after that, I had an interview, maybe about 2-3 weeks later. I had an interview with the executive chef, and my partner suggested, for this Zoom interview, you really need to throw something in your background, for this whole Zoom thing. And it's like, you need to do something that was like one of the pictures from Mount Washington Observatory, since it's all, snow and crazy and world's worst weather. And I ended up putting a picture of the kind of looking down on the summit cone, or rather from the summit cone up to the Sherman building. And sure enough, like we connect, the Zoom call happens, and the first thing the chef says is, wow, where is that picture? And we ended up chatting for probably about 20 minutes unplanned about my time at the Weather Observatory. And then the rest, I kind of feel like was just like obligatory, we have to go through this process. And at the end he said, yeah, we'd like to have you come down here. You'll get information about the rest of the process, in the next coming days. And I was both freaked out and just ecstatic.
I bet. Did you ever find out, like later, did you ever ask them like, hey, how competitive is this? Like, did you interview like 10, 15, 20 people and pick me, or do you have any idea?
I have a little bit of an idea, not necessarily for my interview time. There are a ton of people who interview for that station itself, but there are so many different departments, and the food service department, like anywhere else, is always hurting. And in fact, the season that I was down there, we were probably only 75% staffed.
Really?
One of the things you have to pass is a background check. And I'm sure most of us know that food service workers aren't always, can't always pass that.
They have their moments. Yep. I've worked in a kitchen for many years. I know what that's all about.
So some people get hung up by that. And, but there are some people who interview for years and don't get it. And I'm guessing that they probably interview in different departments, because food service is always wanting.
Yeah, got it. So you had a good hook with the photo and the Zoom background, and that was it. So, so you had like 3-4 weeks to go through this process at any point where you're like, I can't do this. This is just not realistic, or the money situation, or leaving for 6 months?
No, not really. I was living with family at the time. I was kind of looking to get out of the job that I was in and hoping to move up to where I am now. So it kind of helped me accelerate that plan, and it gave me a reason to leave work. Work was very supportive, even though it was kind of going to be it ended up being kind of a last minute. They were aware that I was going through the process, but when I did finally get okay, here's your ticket, they wanted me to leave like that week. It ended up being about a 2-week, notice that I gave them.
Wow. Did they push you pretty hard in the interview process about like, hey, this isn't like rainbows and unicorns. Like you're going to be in a tough environment and you got to be mentally strong enough to deal with this.
There was definitely conversation about that, but also after the actual interview process, you have to go through medical testing and dental testing for those dental reasons.
Stomp.
And then so Stomp. If you want to go to Antarctica,
I'd never pass.
You got to stop opening beers with your teeth. But yeah, there's a drug test, there's a background test. I had more stuff to do after the interview that took me months, because I applied in April, went through the interview process in May, and then it took me from the end of May until September to get medically cleared. So,
got it. And then you start in October?
Yeah, I flew down. They told me October 4th that I was 100% cleared and ready to go down, and I flew out October 14th.
Got it. And I think just so you know, I'm pretty sure I found the blog post that you were referencing. So I did a little bit more digging the last couple of days on it. So I may be like, you may be like, how do you know so much, Mike? And it's like, I think I pretty much found a lot of the info that you did. But so I had read that like basically for the travel, they say you've got an 85 pound limit, and then you can take like 10 or 15 pounds worth of carry on. And then they give you a list of a lot of the gear that you have to bring. So did you have any trouble packing all that stuff in for 6 months?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I went with, I think I ended up buying a 100-liter REI kind of duffel with the backpack straps, because I knew I could carry a 35 pound, because I don't pack well for my hikes. I'm always heavy. But so I knew I could handle one pack on my back and then be able to carry a second duffel bag. And I probably spent a good solid week packing and unpacking and weighing and then repacking. And I actually ended up mailing myself a bunch of stuff. Just like, I think maybe the day before I left, probably 3 or 4 boxes of miscellaneous junk that I didn't necessarily need, but I wanted. I brought down Christmas decorations and Halloween nonsense and some snacks and comforts that I knew I didn't need to pack with me. But yeah, I have 100%. I have Hiking in the Whites to thank for learning how to layer properly. That was a huge help in deciding what to bring.
And then when you have to book the travel, do you eventually, like, I'm assuming you get to New Zealand, which is the closest point to McMurdo Station, and then you have to take a plane from Christchurch, New Zealand into McMurdo. Is that it?
Yep. Thankfully, I don't have to do any of the booking, and all the travel is covered, which was definitely one of the. I mean, how else am I ever going to get to Antarctica? I don't have that kind of money. And so they take care of your plane ticket. You let them know, Boston is my area of departure. And I flew from Boston to Houston, and then Houston to Auckland, northern New Zealand, went through customs there, missed my flight down to Christchurch, but so did like 4 other people who were, also going down. We flew into Christchurch. They put us up in a hotel for 3 or 4 days. And during that time, we have a little bit of time to roam around Christchurch and kind of get our sleep schedule back. Because I don't know about anybody. I had a rough time sleeping from Houston to Auckland. That was a long, long flight.
And what was your first impression of some of your coworkers as you started to meet them at the airport? Did you have a lot in common, or were you like, these people are totally different than me?
They were like, I met a couple of scientist type people. I met a firefighter. I met a heavy equipment operator who was heading out to one of the camps in West Antarctica. And by camps, like literally like camps, like there are no fixed buildings out there. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, well, all I am is a cook. Like I totally felt like they were way up here and I'm down here. And that was a common theme for me, going through the trip. entire experience. But there were so many people who were so appreciative of the people who helped make that station run. It's probably the most level playing field I've ever been on as far as work goes, where everybody's job is important. I mean, there's, without janitors, the place isn't going to run, without cooks, without the laundry, without lodging, without everybody, the scientists aren't going to be able to do their thing. And hearing that appreciation from, people who I was just like, holy crap, you're studying penguins for years down here. Like, that's amazing. And they're like, yeah, well, you're feeding me. So that's even more amazing. That was really something else. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my understanding on so this station, there's a bunch of research that's going on here. There's anywhere between 800 to 1,000 people down there. So it's really like a small town. There's multiple buildings. There's like diesel generators. There's electricity and power, and it's a whole thing going on down there. And then the busy period is really like the sun season, which is what's October through about February or March. And then there's also a period where you also get resupply from. So there's an airstrip. So you fly in with like, what is it, like an A130 plane or something like that, like a big plane?
Yeah, from Christchurch down to Phoenix
or
Airfield,
C-130,
which is on the ice shelf, which is just bizarre. You don't think about it when you're landing and you're getting herded off the plane. But later on you look back, you're like, wow, I just landed on ice. Like, that's really crazy. That was a C-17 to go down. And there was a helicopter in the cargo area, like 6 feet away from me, which was just bizarre on the trip down.
And then there is also a bay there. So there's a period where resupply ships will show up in like January or February. And then essentially for like 2-3 weeks, everybody stops doing everything else and they unload these big ships for supplies, right?
Yeah. So when I got down there in October, the station was right around 600 people. In January, during the height of resupply, we were at 972 because they fly down extra people to help with the unload. And the icebreaker from Seattle comes down to break open the channel, because we're McMurdo and Ross Island and McMurdo Sound is the southernmost location that ships can access Antarctica, if I've said that correctly. So the icebreaker creates this channel so that the resupply ship, the fuel tanker can get in and research vessels can get in. And it all happens within about 3 or 4 weeks in January. And it is a bustling town, and there is stuff they are unloading 24/7 around the clock, and everybody eats food. And I just really wanted them to stop at that point. Feeding 970 people.
And then they don't allow any drinking during that period, right?
Right.
No boozing, no partying during that period?
Absolutely. I'm not going to say it didn't happen, but they don't sell alcohol at that time.
Got it. So, all right. So you arrive there, you're on this big plane. What is orientation like? What is it like when you start to get to meet your day-to-day coworkers?
There's not, most of the orientation happens in Christchurch. You go through training online, you get all of your gear, and whatnot. And you meet, I probably connected with about a dozen, maybe 12 to 18 people who were down in Christchurch at the same time I was. So at least I had that kind of group going in, and you get maybe one day or the remainder of your day after you arrive at the airfield and get bussed into McMurdo. You get the rest of your day to kind of pick up your lodging key, like get your linens, make your bed, figure out how many people you're staying with, figure out where the food is. And then, I don't know about other departments, but I was at work the next day at 9:00, and it was very intimidating.
How did you handle the dorm situation and living with a bunch of people?
I was not looking forward to it. I kind of lucked out. You get among other things, you get a little survey before you even leave the U.S., what pronouns do you use? What are you comfortable with as far as living situations and different genders? And then there's your ECW gear, your extreme cold weather gear, and all this other stuff that they want you to go through. And on my living survey, I guess I wrote, because I'm older, I am definitely not I didn't go down there to party. I wasn't looking for, kind of college campus summer camp shenanigans. I value my sleep. Mm-hmm. And I wrote that half-heartedly, thinking, whatever. I just said, I'm hoping to room with somebody maybe closer to my own age, because I really value my sleep. And instead of putting me in building 155, which is the large blue building where the cafeteria is, the largest building in the station, and a lot of the dorms are, and those dorm rooms hold 5 people. And if some of your roommates might be on a midnight schedule rather than, your schedule, I was really hoping to avoid that. And I ended up in the building across the street, and only had 2 other roommates. And I didn't even have 2 roommates full time. I think I really lucked out as far as roommates go, both with being able to get along with them and not having any for a little bit of the time while I was down there. Because a lot of people stop into McMurdo before going to the South Pole or before going out to one of the camps out in the wilderness.
All right. And then you're feeding, so you're working as a sous chef, you're feeding 600 to 900 people. Is your background in food service, or I'm assuming you had some? Yeah,
I've worked in restaurants and a school and hospital kitchen for almost all my life. Food service is fairly easy, may not always be fun, but it's always there. It's always available. And I actually I got hired as a production cook and started out in the salad room, which is fantastic because we had access and we were kind of the gatekeepers to the fresh produce, which is
all right. That's a valuable position.
Yes, it is. Until, of course, you don't have any fresh produce and you're making up really weird salads without any fresh produce. But I got started there, and then we had a couple of cooks that moved to the South Pole, or when they went out to one of the camps, or they got medevaced out and they were losing staff out in the bigger kitchen. And I got offered the position of sous chef, which is not the kind of position that I like. But I figured, you know what, I'm already kind of out on a limb here, and I know it'll be over, come February. So why not? So I accepted the position and was sous chef for the lunch period. So I was there from 5 a.m. until 3 p.m.
All right. And that's 6 days a week?
6 days a week, 9 hours a day.
Okay. And then what did you do during off time? What was available? I mean, it's obviously a lot of indoor time because you've got, cold weather and whatnot, but what were your little hobbies? About
the cold weather, the climate is so dry. There's no moisture in the air. Like a 30-degree day with full sun feels like a breezy 50. So I would be out in a long sleeve, t-shirt, or just my chef coat, walking across the road to work. It's amazing what humidity will do. And there were a lot of times I had to remind myself that I was in Antarctica, because it didn't, you don't have what you expect, just cold craziness, snow all the time. Our in the summertime, our roads were, it was dirt road and bright sun outside, and it wasn't deathly cold. Unless, all right,
so you could do a lot of outdoor stuff, but did you the first immediate thing I would do, the second I had a time off, is I would immediately start digging around, looking for where they keep the UFOs and the aliens. I would check every corner of that place.
It was really interesting because a lot of people there, the station was built, I think in the 50s, 56, 57. And a lot of people who have been there have a really interesting sense of humor. I did find, not on my own, but I did find there's a secret Elmo temple. Yes. Somewhere on the station. I won't say where.
That's awesome. Yeah, and honestly, and we'll link the pictures in the show notes, but like some of the pictures you sent, like Stomp, I don't know if you got this impression, but for me, I was like, this looks like the set of Lost. Like there's big like mainframe computer looking things, and there's like weather equipment and weather balloons and all this stuff. I'm like, this is like straight out of Lost.
Oh yeah, it's such a weird conglomeration of images.
Yeah, it's really something else. The station itself is kind of like a mining camp where there's nothing pretty down there. It's a bunch of heavy equipment running around and diesel fuel, fumes and stark buildings. But there's also like a list of, I think, 20 or 25 metal sculptures that are hidden in plain sight around the station. So like that was, once I found out about those, that was, one of the things that I added, into my time. There were geocaches on the island that, of course, I went after. There's hiking trails to go after. And then, inside, there's a craft room, there's a music room, there's a library that you can volunteer to run. There's the coffee shop that you can barista at. There's so many things. There's so much stuff to do down there. If I ever went back, I would probably not do food service because that sapped a lot of my energy. And I feel like I missed out on doing a lot of things down there. But anything you can think of, I probably did.
Yeah, and what's one thing I noticed too in some of the pictures that you took is that, so the way that the station is set up, like there's a bunch of buildings, and then if you look around, like the photos that you put on there, there's little mountains that are surrounded. There's got to be like 5 or 6 of these little summits, and I'm assuming there's trails to go up there, and you can get like nice views of the bay and whatnot. So is there any restrictions on hiking those, or can you? Yes. I mean, obviously there's weather rules depending on what category of weather is allowed, but if it's like a category 1 weather situation where there's no issue, can you just go out and hike on those mountains?
Yep. So it's reversed. There are 3 conditions. There's a condition 3, which is really that there are no conditions. There's a condition. Okay. There's a condition 2 where travel should be limited. You're not leaving the town or the station unless you really need to or you have authorization. And then there's condition 1 where it's pretty much a whiteout. You should be staying where you are, whether it's work or your dorm or whatever, that there shouldn't be any travel. I only saw one condition 1 when I was down there. And I think I saw condition 2, and it gets pretty hairy out there. But in the summertime, there were probably half of the trails you could go by yourself without an issue at any time. A couple of the trails you would need to have at least one other person with you. You would have to file a plan online with the communications department and check out a radio. And those are just some of the longer ones. There's the Cape Armitage Trail that actually brought you off the island over the sea ice past the New Zealand station, and then you connected with the road that brings you out to Williams Field and Phoenix Airfield. That was lengthy, but you couldn't do that one solo. Same with going out to a feature called Castle Rock, which is one of the hikes I didn't get to do. You had to have somebody with you and a radio and file a plan to go out there.
Okay, and you don't really have to worry too much about wildlife. Like you got penguins and walruses and some birds, but that's about it, right?
No walruses. Seals. You had Weddell seals.
Oh, seals. Okay.
Like giant puppy dogs. We saw Adelie penguins and very few emperor penguins, and then there was one bird, plentiful. It's called a skua, very similar to our seagulls. And there's apparently a second bird. A second bird was sighted. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a big thing. Okay. Because there was a second different kind of bird spotted and available. But that was it. for wildlife.
All right. And then would you typically go like after shift, or would you wait to do these adventures on your day off?
It kind of depends. I wanted to look for the weather, because if I was going to hike somewhere with a view, I wanted to be able to see. And I knew that I had, another 4 months or so to be there. So I would cherry pick my days where if the weather was going to be nice, I would go on my day off. In the beginning, October and November, I did do a lot of activities after work because the population was lower. But once we got into, Thanksgiving was a 12-hour day, Christmas was a 12-hour day. And then in January with the resupply shifts, it was just exhausting. So I would go to work, I would come home, I would sleep, usually through dinner, wake up early morning, and not really do much because I knew I had to get back into work. So January kind of sucked. And a lot of people don't want to hear the reality of it. They just want to hear, it's so amazing. But January was rough.
Yeah. Did you get along pretty well with your coworkers? And that's the thing too. Is as a woman too, I think it's like, I'm assuming that like it skews pretty heavily men as well. So was there a weird dynamic with that, or did you tend to get along with everybody?
No, not really. This was after having spent 30 some odd years in the food service. This was probably the least toxic kitchen that I've ever been in.
Got it.
I mean, you don't just fall into a job in Antarctica. You're there because you want to be there, rather than, just getting a hookup, from somebody or whatever. So you already have this kind of commonality. And I didn't meet anybody there that was boring. Like, I mean, everybody is just so amazing. And whether you get along, there's always going to be some kind of personality, rifts maybe, but you're stuck. It's a very small community. And even if you don't know a person, you know who they are. You've seen them, especially working in food service. You've seen them come through the cafeteria because everybody eats and everybody knows everybody. Yeah, and I really didn't personally have any issue with either personality conflicts or any kind of sexual harassment. There was a lot of training that went towards sexual harassment. And it was definitely probably a 70-30, 60-40 kind of split between men and women down there.
Okay. And special events. So you sent some pictures over, like it looked like there's like a good New Year's event where you have like a live music, and it seems like I was reading online that it seems like there's a bunch of sort of cultural things that go on there. Like people are very into dressing up in costumes and onesies and things like that. So can you talk a little bit about like Ice Talk and some of the other special events that went on?
Yeah, Ice Talk was a ridiculous blast. I mean, it's New Year's Eve with full sunlight, for the entire day. And
it's so weird.
It really, really was. I will probably never again celebrate a New Year's Eve countdown in full sunlight. And I probably could have worn shorts. It was so warm outside. And as an added bonus, NASA, along with a couple of other companies that I really don't remember, they launched a weather balloon on January 1st, and they happened to launch it like maybe about an hour, or I guess December 31st. They happened to launch it maybe about an hour before the countdown. So it was a beautiful, beautiful day. All the bands that played, which were probably 8 to 12 bands,
wow,
were all created down there from people who had, just met each other, and they would practice in the band room or whatever and put on, all sorts of bizarre shows. And it was just, it was just a people outside having fun and kind of forgetting where you are, but also recognizing how special it was to be there, like at this time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting with like that relatively small number of people, like you can put together 8 to 10 bands with that population.
Well, I mean, we were just getting ready for resupply, so we were probably at about 800 or 900 people.
Okay, so the odds are in there. So
yeah.
And then for you, did you, like with the day-to-day work for feeding people, how exactly does that work? Is there like a set time, like where people have to come and eat at 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock for lunch, or is it, can people just roll in whenever they want?
Both, actually. So the cafeteria is open 24/7. You can come in. There's a deli refrigerated unit where you could come in at any time, make yourself a peanut butter and jelly or a tuna sandwich or whatever happens to be stocked, deli meats and cheese or whatever. There is a waffle maker, much to the chagrin of the Stewies that worked kind of the front of the house of the kitchen.
Stewies.
Stewards, food stewards, but we call them Stewies. They called themselves Stewies. But yeah, there are always cookies, unfortunately, and coffee and hot chocolate and tea and, just about anything you would want to maybe munch on. There was also a grab and go refrigerated area where we would wrap up leftovers. If people wanted to come in and grab 4 pieces of fried chicken, that didn't sell, last week, or not last week, a couple days ago, that was always stocked. And then we did breakfast. I think it's a 2.5 hour time period for breakfast. And then lunch, which I was responsible for, was 11 to 1. And then dinner, if I remember correctly, was maybe 5 to 7 or 5 to 7:30. And then there was also, during the height of summer, during the summer season, there was also a midnight meal as well. So it was 24/7 around the clock. We had a 5-week menu rotation. When, we have a hotline up there we usually did 2 vegetables and a couple of starches and some proteins and a vegetarian or vegan meal. And there was a pizza station. Sometimes there's a burger station. I mean, I was really impressed with how many options there were.
Yeah, and the food storage, so you've got a lot of frozen meat, but did you ever come close to running out of, obviously fresh produce is a little bit different, but the meats you can freeze, did you ever come close to running out of things, or was it pretty well stocked?
Not necessarily running out, but at the end of February, when the first round of summer staff started leaving or started preparing to leave, there were a number of delays, and our food orders, which we would get every week, we had, a dry storage and we had frozen storage on the station, as well as storage buildings in Christchurch, to restock, resupply. Mm-hmm. But for our local food deliveries, they are sent to us based on population. So at the end of February, when we're feeding, the end of February, we're still feeding like 700 people. And those 700 people are supposed to go on a plane maybe Monday. And that plane gets delayed for 4 or 5 days, as it did. Then you're suddenly feeding 700 people on like a 600 or 500 people food budget. Mm. And when food runs out at lunchtime at like 12 o'clock, and you need to restock, like you can't just say, oops, like, sorry. You run into the idea of either trying to figure out something to do with leftovers that's close to the menu that's been put out station-wide. You don't necessarily want to steal from next week because you're really just kind of screwing yourself next week. And it got to be incredibly frustrating for everybody because the people who are still on station who are supposed to leave really want to leave. And the people who are on station really want those people to leave too, but for like totally different reasons. And then that happened again in March. My original contract was until February 19th. I was supposed to be one of those people to leave. And I had the opportunity to extend my contract for about another 3 weeks. And I thought, for maybe the opportunity to see some of the night sky or to see maybe some adverse weather conditions, I will stay. I had the opportunity to stay either till March or till May. Because I took some time to think about it, the May opportunity got taken away. Somebody else filled that position. So I ended up staying until March. And then my flight was supposed to leave March 18th. I did not leave the ice until April 20th because of weather delays, crew delays, mechanic delays, the C-17s. I'm not really sure I would ever count on them for anything again. The way that they seem to always have parts breaking. They were flying people from the U.S. to Christchurch with specific parts, with specific people to fix the C-17 so we could get out. And they flew commercial and they lost their luggage and the parts. Like it was it was an unbelievable and a record-setting set of events. And we were delayed.
Now, are you still working as you're waiting to get flown off, or are you done when your contract's done and you're just sitting there waiting?
No, kind of thankfully, good for the checkbook. If your flight is delayed, you are not required to go back into work because you never know if the weather's going to clear or, that part's going to be fixed. If your flight is canceled, you are expected to report back. The good thing was, and hopefully, the big bosses aren't listening, because the big bosses actually left. The executive chef and the culinary director left at the end of February. Mm-hmm. They do, like 4 or 6 months on the ice, and then they work remotely from home. So the food service supervisor was in charge at that point, and we were fairly well staffed for the population at the time. So it wasn't 100% imperative that I work my 9 hours. And there was a lot of emotional trauma going on. Yeah. from oh, you're going to leave? Oh, you think you're going to leave? No, you're not going to leave.
Yeah.
I had 2 weeks of travel plans set for the South Island of New Zealand, the North Island, and then Sydney, Australia, and then the eclipse back here. I was going to get back in time to go see the eclipse in upstate New York. All of that was wiped out. Yeah. I didn't get to do any of that. But I made money, and I wasn't spending money. I get to see the southern night sky, which is so bizarre, looking up at a night sky and not recognizing anything. Seeing the Milky Way, seeing the southern lights. So, yes, I was supposed to be off the ice, 33 days prior to when I actually left. But without that delay, I never would have had those experiences. So, you gotta roll with things sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then, as far as like the mood there when you get delayed, so you got delayed. How long? A month was it?
33 days. We actually, and it's a process. So you have to, when your flight is happening, you'll be on a roster. You will check out. You will essentially, return your room to the state that you found it. All of your bags are packed. You check your bags in at the transportation department. You get weighed. Your bags get weighed and taken. You get weighed with your ECW on. You have to have it on for the flight. Your carry-on bag gets weighed. Everything gets weighed and checked in, and all that stuff goes away, and they palletize it to be put on probably a C-17 or a C-130. And then you spend, a couple hours. You go to the cafeteria to pack some food for the flight, or you say goodbyes or whatever. And then you head back to the transportation building with the hopes that you're going to, one, make it on transport, one of the Delta vehicles or the Crests that bring you out to the airfield, which is about a 45-minute drive. And then you wait in the passenger terminal, which is a very small building with some seats and heat, thankfully. And 3 times we were shuttled out there. And I think the first time we turned around at mile 3 because the flight had been canceled. So we go back, and everybody kind of expect to get delayed, like at least once. It's going to happen. It's crazy weather, and all these things can go wrong. The second time we made it out to the airfield and waited for an hour. And then we found out that the plane was actually circling about an hour north of us for an hour waiting for the airfield temperature to rise by 2 degrees because of the additive in the fuel could only work at a certain, temperature parameter. Mm-hmm. And it rose 1 degree at like 4:00 in the afternoon. And
dangerous place.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that. Like, it was incredibly frustrating, but I also don't want the people who are going to fly me off of, the harshest continent to do it, without the right stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understood it, but it was so incredibly frustrating to hear, no, we're taking you back after you've waited for an hour because the plane is going to fly back to Christchurch. Otherwise, they're going to run out of fuel for 1 degree of temperature. Crazy.
Now, Jen, if you had mentioned like if you could go back, you wouldn't work in food service. Like what job, from your opinion, like, so, and I was able to find this, like there's basically 5 channels that you can pursue. There's 5 different contractors that own responsibility for hiring at McMurdo Station. So you can apply for all kinds of different jobs. If you could go back now, what job would you ideally like to do?
I didn't do a lot of, you have the opportunity to do some volunteering or shadowing in different departments. One of my friends volunteered in, I don't remember the exact department, but they took care of all of the equipment that people would use for field camps out in the, crazy wilds of Antarctica. That's something I would love to get into, or maybe supply, because you're out and about. You're not stuck inside a windowless room, feeding the masses. I am a person who likes to move, so I would definitely still want something physical. Like I wouldn't want to be behind a desk or something, but I just feel like the kitchen took so much out of me. I mean, I've worked, fast restaurants before where you're feeding, 300 people a night, but it's a completely different situation down there.
Yeah, I think I would. So I'm looking at these. So Stomp, if we wanted to get a job down here, so basically there's this like organization called Ghana Ayahu, I think. Is that right?
Close enough.
So, yeah, close enough, right? So they're the contractor, and they've got like, there's 75 jobs open right now. So you can apply. You can be a beverage supervisor. There's all kinds of food service. There's a hairstylist. So I feel like every dude down there must have a big long beard too. So the hairstylist must be like braiding beards for everybody, right?
Right. Yeah. The running joke was pretty much, oh, have you met, so-and-so? No, who's that? Oh, that's the white guy with the beard.
Yeah. Right. So,
I mean, that's 70% of the men on station.
Yeah, it's funny. So there's
they must have physical therapy need, right?
It's funny. I brought that up because the job just beat me up so much. Like, why don't we have a physical therapist down here? And I was talking to somebody.
Here I am.
And they said that they used to have somebody down there. But I don't know if it was terminated or if it was somebody who was down there in a different capacity, who just offered that.
Yeah.
But I would have 100% loved that.
Well, Stomp, I will tell you that it's the University of Texas Medical Branch that has positions open. And right now they've got physician, dentist, nurse administrator, flight nurse, and then physical therapist is listed, but it says currently not actively recruiting for the position. So it could be that they have somebody, or that they've just decided that they don't want to bring somebody on board. But like so I'll include the links in all the show notes for anybody that wants to apply. But it sounds like, Jen, based on what you're telling me, like you got to have a hook during the interview. Like you've got to, that idea about the Zoom. Honestly, like I've interviewed and I've hired like thousands of people in my career. I'm a recruiter by trade. And I will tell you that like that first 5 seconds when you start the discussion, if you can find that hook, like you're in. Like you just got to find some common ground with the interviewer, and you can really, you can land some good jobs.
It definitely worked for me.
Yeah.
How does law enforcement work down there?
So there is one station. There's a station manager who pretty much runs or is responsible, the head of the station. Generally speaking, as I understand it, they are a U.S. Marshal. And that is law.
That makes sense.
That's the law enforcement. But otherwise, it's a fairly community policed area. But there's so much. There's so much. I don't necessarily want to say tolerance, but so many people are open to so many different things because you can't. I don't think that you can be a very strict, rigid, not open and adventurous person to do that kind of an adventure. And I'm sure that there are some people who are like that, but it's a lot easier if you're open to weirdness, like, seeing somebody in a unicorn onesie coming into the cafeteria at 2:00 in the morning, because it happens.
Yep. Yeah, and Stomp, basically the way they break it down is you've got transport and infrastructure jobs, you've got medical jobs, you've got a group that hires for food retail support, engineering and IT, and then you've got an operations and logistics job. So like the medical jobs are pretty straightforward. The infrastructure jobs are like there's a land surveyor, there's like a fire captain, there's a supply supervisor, inventory data specialist, crane operators, cargo coordinators, power plant technicians. There's all kinds of jobs here. And then the IT stuff is like network administrator, safety engineer, satellite communication, antenna rigging. So yeah, and then they've got like hairstylish, food service, waste management, postal clerks, and it's all kinds of interesting stuff here. So I'll post these links.
Oh, there you go.
And I'd love it if any listeners, land a job down there. Let us know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
So. I mean, if anybody's listening wants to go for the food service, reach out to me and I will happily help you get down there. It's hard, but it's an experience.
Yeah. We'll put your Instagram on there, so maybe you got some new friends on Instagram. Just remember, you can't be a criminal though, so don't think that like if you spend some time in Walpole or Norfolk and then you can go down. You can't do that, and don't bother Jen if you're a criminal.
Yeah, that's half a food service though.
Right. So, but
I have a couple questions, Jen.
Yeah.
Just briefly before we move on. Are you a member of the 200 Club?
I am not a member of the 200 Club.
Do you want to explain that or shall I?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so at Munson Scott South Pole Station, they have a 300 Club, and that basically means that when it's 100 below zero, some people will go into a sauna that's measured at about 200 degrees and then go outside and run around naked in their flip-flops for X amount of time. The McMurdo isn't as cold, so there's the 200 Club, which means that you're experiencing 0 degree Fahrenheit and going into the 200 degree sauna and then doing the same thing, running around naked.
Yeah.
Apparently it's one of the most exclusive clubs in the world.
I had no desire for that.
All right, so you're not a member.
No,
okay.
Not a member.
Okay, all right, just checking.
I will say I was happy to see that, that guy in the winter coming out of dunks in the shorts, even though it's like, 30 degrees outside, they still exist. They exist everywhere. There are plenty of them down at McMurdo.
Yeah, there's a short person club too, I think, right?
Yeah, I was too tall for that.
Okay, well, I'm too tall for that too, thankfully.
All right, and then my last question is a couple questions, actually. Are there really dancing penguins down there?
I mean...
It's a happy foot reference.
So
all right, I'll take that as a no.
I've never seen that movie. I will say that the Adelie penguins that we saw, like, first off, when the first group, I don't know what a flock of penguins is called. I should probably know this. But when the first group of penguins are seen on station, like an alert actually goes out and just about everything stops and people go out to see them. So Adelie penguins are usually a little more goofier than emperor penguins, and they will, slide and move around and whatnot. But yeah, no dancing penguins.
All right, and this is my last one before Mike realizes what I'm doing and kills me. So the last one is, you mentioned helicopters. So have you met any helicopter pilots named R.J. McCready? And are there also flamethrowers in every building?
So I feel like, when I'm going to go back a little bit, and when we started getting delayed, like delay after delay after delay, the kitchen, there were 8 of us in the kitchen that were delayed. And we started asking each other, well, there has to be some kind of unfinished business. Like, what haven't you done that you were supposed to do? What is keeping us down here? And some people, it was like file their taxes or get an extension or whatever. And we realized that together, like all of us had never watched the thing while on the continent. I mean, I had seen it previously.
Yeah.
But so we did have a viewing, and we laughed at a lot of the nonsense that was down there. But, that was necessary. That was necessary viewing.
Yeah, like rite of passage.
Yes, and just so that everybody is aware, a group of penguins on land is called a wattle. A wattle.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Oh, I wanted to mention, going back to your opening this with an Anthony Bourdain quote. I actually, because he, visited the station. If you haven't seen his documentary on his visit, it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, I'll include it in the show notes.
Yeah, and he spent a little time in the radio booth and the vinyl room. And I'm not a huge, audiophile, but I did have the opportunity to join my friend Hershey, trail name Hershey, from Pennsylvania, oddly enough. He did a radio show every Saturday night. I joined him for a couple, just to say that I'd been on the radio, in Antarctica. And the more interesting bit was that I got to check out their vinyl room, which was just really amazing, and this amazing piece of history. And sure enough, in the logbook for the vinyl room is Anthony Bourdain's signature.
Oh, wow.
Which was just,
cool.
It was really cool.
Wow, that's amazing. So, so for the listeners, if you want to live the dream, I think you've given us the good, bad, and the the real deal on what it's like. It's not all rainbows and unicorns, but it is a pretty cool adventure. It's something that I think would be of interest. You get people that are looking to make a change, or they've got the luxury to go off, and maybe they don't want to do a through hike for 6 months. They want to go to Antarctica. I think this is a good idea. So yeah. Anything else we missed? Cool. I will definitely have you back on in the future to talk more about geocaching, because I think that's a whole episode on its own. But anything else we missed? Anything you think we should have covered?
God, I don't think so. I think you were pretty thorough. I'd say you guys, but I know Mike did all the work on this one.
Yeah. Well, Stomp does all the editing, so it's even Steven.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah,
I think Stomp, why don't we'll cut out the search and rescue stuff, and then I had a history segment. We were going to talk about Henry David Thoreau, but we'll push that to next week, and we'll call this a wrap because we're at about 2 hours. So, Jen, thank you so much for joining us, and we learned everything about Antarctica and all about. Actually, one other thing before we close. My understanding is that it is illegal to pee on the ground in Antarctica, and that whether you're a man or a woman, you have to bring a Nalgene bottle and pee into the bottle when you go hiking.
Well, there's no pee in Antarctica.
There's no pee.
There's no pee.
Yeah. So yes. Yeah.
So if you are out, if you're
Makes
something
sense.
else you might want to include in the show notes is information about the Antarctica Treaty.
Yes. Yeah. I was reading about that.
50s, there's like 30 countries, about 30 countries that recognize it. There's no military presence allowed, other than we do have different military groups that come down to help, I think, medically, and then probably with resupply. But, it's big on the environment. You're not supposed to mess with penguins. There's, I don't remember it, but I think it's like 30 feet. Like you have to be 30 feet away if they're nesting, a little less if they're just, out and about, or, if a bird, the skua lands on the trash bin that I am taking the trash out from the kitchen, I can't shoo it away.
That's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We actually had a really interesting situation in the kitchen where a shipment of romaine lettuce came down with slugs, and we had to collect the slugs for the environmental department so they could categorize and, take note of it. But it was, like in a regular kitchen, it's just like, I'm going to wash this, make sure that this gets washed and the slugs aren't there. But in there, it's a big deal. Yeah, and, so you're not supposed to mess with animals. You're obviously very, very much into leave no trace on the, just being out and about. And you need to have a pee bottle if you're going to go out, on long distance trails, or, there's no reason to pee next to the building if you can get inside and, go true. Use an actual restroom. But if you're out on the trails, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, it's very interesting. So I'll include that in the show notes. And thanks again, Jen. This has been great. And we've learned a lot on this. And I really am interested to see if any of the listeners get inspired to go try to work down there. You've started the trend.
I think that would, it was, I had some rough times down there, but it was an amazing experience. I will never regret it. It was just unreal to recognize that I was in Antarctica. Like, it was really something else. So, yeah, I'd love to hear if anybody, decides to go after it or wants more information.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Well, thanks for having me. Jen. I appreciate it.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Fieldstone Kombucha is New England's premier craft kombucha company. If you're in the heart of New England, you need to drink a New England-style kombucha. Softer, less acidic, and truly enjoyable. Our kombucha is naturally effervescent and boasts full-bodied flavor. Fieldstone crafts the best seasonal flavors. When we tell you there's strawberries in our garden blush flavor, it's like biting into a sun-ripened strawberry. Woman-owned and operated, we brew in Rhode Island using locally sourced ingredients. Fieldstone Kombucha is the perfect replenishing drink after a day on the slopes or a trek in the woods. It's chock full of probiotics and healthy acids to keep you in top form. Find us at Sunflower Natural Foods in Laconia, La Tasse Cafe in Waterville Valley, the Concord Food Co-op, and Granite State Food Co-op in Concord, and more. Check out our website for the full list of New Hampshire and New England-wide locations, and of course, you can use Slasher code on our website for 10% off an online order shipped straight to your door. So that's fieldstonekombuchaco.com.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.